Peace and blessings, and welcome to Healing from Loss to Love. It's all about love, the ZOLA Experience podcast. My name is Katora Bryant, and I am your host. And today I am joined by Nadir Abdul-Salaam, the Executive Director of the ZOLA Experience. Welcome, Nadir.
Greetings. It's definitely a pleasure to be here with you and having this great discussion.
Well, today we're going to delve into a very important subject, and that is how the ZOLA experience and the ZOLA method can be useful for men. Oftentimes, men are a little bit more shy about coming into such a space, and because it's an unknown space. So, can you just tell us a little bit of your history in engaging men into the ZOLA experience? Because we want folks to know that we do separate groups from time to time because they have different needs and different needs for conversation. We sometimes have identified female groups, identified male groups, and we can have groups specific for whatever it is that you would like to process. So today we're going to talk about how the ZOLA experience has been used in reference to stimulating conversations with men. Can you say a little bit about that, Nadir?
I definitely have a little bit more than a little.
Mm-hmm.
We know in our society, in particular Western society, that there is a stigma on mental health, and especially for men with mental health. Mental health issues are sometimes seen as a sign of weakness. So when we are experiencing those, being overwhelmed with those issues, we tend not to look for help. We tend to internalize our pain and our experience. And what we've seen as far as health-wise is become detrimental towards our physical health as well as our mental health, because we don't process our experiences in a healthy way, and we don't have the tools to, or even the allowance to process our experiences. Mm-hmm. And when I say that is, being emotionally available has never been promoted as a sign of masculinity in our society. So if a man has those experiences where they feel sad or, they feel hurt, that is seen as a sign of weakness. And vulnerability is also seen as a sign of weakness. And I think that is the exact opposite. Vulnerability shows that you're strong enough to expose, the parts that need to be strengthened. If you never expose those aspects, those weak spots will just be hidden, but they'll still be able to be exploited. Mm-hmm. And as a Black man living in America, from my experiences, it seems like our pain and our unprocessed pain that we carry on a day-to-day basis gets exploited for the benefit of other people. And that is why you see the incarceration rates for Black men to be the way they are, for the special education and behavior issues for Black children are the way they are, is because that we are not given that type of grace to experience, to talk about and process our negative experiences that we've had in this society. And that's historically. Mm-hmm. So the ZOLA experience provides a conversation starter for us to talk about those things, to talk about our lost love objects. And when I say lost love object, I'm describing those things that we cared about that we no longer have access to. And those, like I said in a previously, that a lost love object is something that can be, geographical. It can be something that you experience as far as your sense of self. And I think the loss of our sense of self as a Black man in America is something that we've never had a chance to directly address. I feel that the ZOLA method provides structure for those conversations for us to discuss that,
Mm-hmm.
to discuss those things that we have experienced, whether it be through um, gun violence, whether it be through abuse, whether it be through incarceration, or failed relationships. All those different experiences shape how we interact with each other and society. And within our history of us being in this country and the extreme levels of trauma that we've experienced, we've never had permission to process our trauma in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And what the ZOLA method brings to our community is a way for us to, one, destigmatize those conversations that we tend not to have, as well as provide a space for us to process and to begin healing from those negative experiences that we've had throughout our life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely correct in the sense that when I hear you talk about how it does impact our relationships, the interpersonal relationships that we have with the females and children and those significant people in our lives, how that impacts that. We know that the other side of fear is anger, right? Energetically. So we oftentimes say we don't understand the violence in the community. We don't understand what they're now saying is the broken interpersonal relationships that are impacting families. We know that it's so important that there's a balance in households and that the male's role is crucial. There's been talk, recently, I think more in the early 2000s around questioning the importance of men in our children's lives, especially our daughters' lives. We recognize the impact for our sons, but the conversation also has been, how is the absence, quote unquote, of the father impacting our daughters' lives as well? So say a little bit about your experience in facilitating these men's groups and how are they different from even our co-ed groups?
Yes. Well, I like to have groups that are single sex groups. I see there's definitely a huge benefit to that. There's benefits to co-ed groups as well, but even within those co-ed conversations, there need to be separated spaces for particular discussions. Because you want to be able to feel comfortable and you want to create a safe space. And sometimes when we are in a co-ed room, as men, we want to make sure that we present ourselves in the best light, and we will not discuss certain things that might make us look less than what we want to be presented as.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to really do that work that needs to be done, we need to be as candid and honest with ourselves about our actions. Our role within our community, in different ways have had a negative impact. So when we look at those hysterical negative impacts, we have to look at where is the root of these behaviors. And a lot of it comes from those early experiences that we've had as children that have never been addressed. And within the ZOLA method, we explicitly have those discussions about those experiences. And a lot of the times that I've seen in the groups that I've facilitated is that 20, 30 years after an incident and no one has talked about it. It's just been holding on to and being silent about it. And the people within their family, they know what's going on, but no one has discussed it with them. And they had never had the freedom to discuss about that particular incident and how it has impacted them until they came to that ZOLA circle. And then they're able to speak about it. And one thing that I've also seen that a lot of times, especially in particular with Black men, we have a lot of shared experiences. Might not be the exact same thing, but the same type of effect that it had on us. And it allows us to see how society has shaped our community based off of those experiences that we've had. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, we've been exploited. And I think when we come to that conclusion, it empowers us as men in the community to change, because you have an understanding that what you see today comes from something. It's not just who you are. Mm-hmm. There's certain things that happen that probably should not have happened. And the fact that they have happened, and we are who we are today, as men, we have to take responsibility for our change. And that's where a lot of times the conversation goes to is, what do we need to do to make things better or to repair what has happened? Because one thing that we say within the ZOLA lexicon is repair or repeat. And if you don't take the time to sit and fix the things that you know that are broken, that you are conscious that are broken, then you're going to continue to repeat that negative behavior to your family and within your community, and it perpetuates. So that is the great benefit of having these conversations as a tool for destigmatizing that mental health aspect, as well as for community building. Because now I know your struggles, I know your accomplishments, I know what you've been through. And you know the same thing about me. So now I know how I can trust you, and I know your capacity now. And I've seen that, in numerous times through circles, just those 8 hours of going through a ZOLA experience can create a lifetime bond amongst strangers. And like I said, I've done this numerous times, and I definitely see the benefit of these experiences. And this is the reason why I want to make sure that this is accessible to as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we are going into a situation in the U.S. where the entire majority community, and I say majority because when you put all of what the system wants to be classified as quote unquote minorities, when you put all of the individuals who make up the BIPOC community, when you put all of us together, then we become a majority, right? And we're a global majority. So, but we're entering into a space where people are feeling vulnerable. People are, men and women are both feeling quite vulnerable, as well as children. So how can, I see from this lens that the ZOLA method groups are even more important now than ever before, because people are feeling vulnerable. And to be able to have a space to begin to talk about that. What does that mean? I know that I have heard peripheral kind of conversations around, how do I keep my family safe? How do I keep the people that I love safe? So what do you see as a vision for the ZOLA Healing Circles moving forward, and how can we impact communities? And do you think that how will it improve the communication between their partners?
All right, well, let me kind of attack that backwards. So let me get that last point, approach that last point. The ZOLA method is a great community building tool. And like we say in ZOLA, the first thing that we want you to impact is yourself, is your love of self, and then it's your love of family. Those people within your circle, which is able to expound to your love of community, and then the whole society. So what ZOLA does is create that communication in that language for you and your partner to discuss those things that make you to who you are. It is important that we know the reasons of why we are who we are. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's kind of hard to have a dialogue where we discuss those experiences that we've had that have caused pain and have caused tremendous loss. But those experiences are what shaped you into the person that you are today. So to negate those experiences as into who you are, it will be hard for someone to know who you truly are. Mm-hmm. So what the ZOLA method does is it breaks that barrier and it creates those spaces for conversation to have that discussion and to speak about what you experience and how it has impacted you and what it looks like today. And it also allows for your partner to be more supportive. How can they be supportive of your healing if they have no idea what hurt you? And like again, for men, that goes back to our vulnerability. Do you want to show that vulnerable side to your partner? Society kind of tells you don't do that. But then we can also see that might be a reason why there's so many schisms within the relationships that we've had between male and women. So the vulnerability aspect provides you with that space to be like, this is where I need help at, and this is where I need support. Mm-hmm. And I think that will allow for, a strengthening between those relationship bonds and how you can communicate with each other.
So I think when you put together the other side of the partnership is also going through the ZOLA experience and learning the language of the ZOLA method, and then you bring them together. That is that healing for families. The conversations may not be had prior to the individuals coming together. So what we're trying to do is build a foundation where those kind of conversations are warranted, that are encouraged, starting with the children. And our male children in particular, because we continue to give that mixed message of negating what is going on with them, to the point where I think the most common experience is, a little boy falls and scraped his knee and his knee is bleeding, to say, he's crying. He says, stop crying, be a man, don't, it's not hurting that bad. But yeah, it is. It's hurting enough that I see blood. It's hurting enough that it's creating pain for me. Validate my experience. And I think that's the beauty of what happens in the ZOLA groups, is that it validates your experience. And that's what people want, is validation. Correct?
That's true. And that is like the first example of male vulnerability to be disqualified. Like you don't have the opportunity to be vulnerable, even though you are hurt. You don't get the chance to be that. And that is the messaging that us as men in this society, we receive. And that is why there's such a huge stigma on, doing mental health work because, it shows that there may be something quote unquote wrong. And then also to, discuss about the incoming cultural shift in American politics and how it may affect us as a community. Um, the ZOLA method is important when we're discussing how we need to liberate ourselves from the current structures, especially oppressive structures that we currently live in. So when we look at liberating design models or liberatory design models, having these discussions in safe spaces for us to express what we've experienced and the harm that has been caused from those experiences creates a dialogue and also the environment for change to happen. Mm-hmm. If we don't discuss what has happened and the effects of it, then nothing will be done. It'll just continue to be perpetuated. So it is very important, for us to continue these dialogues in these spaces, so that when things do come about within this culture shift and the harm that may have been perpetuated, we can address it immediately because we have spaces for us to do with that. Mm-hmm. And knowing what we've experienced during the last Trump presidential years, there was a lot of racial trauma that was perpetuated to the point that at the end of the 4 years, people were going out into the streets and rioting. And that was just a powder keg. So based off of this previous election, they made it very clear that they are doubling down on perpetuating racial trauma. Mm-hmm. And with that anticipation is bringing a lot of anxiety within our community. I can see it, and not just the Black community, in all communities, the Asian community, the Latin community, and even in the white community. We're all feeling a level of uneasiness in anticipation for the next 4 years. And this is another reason why these ZOLA circles, more ambassadors, and just more discussions and talk about the importance of our mental health and building our community is so important. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons why, we're just advocating to families, to schools, to churches, to invite us in for a conversation or for a workshop. The benefits for this will be generational. And we definitely need to be intentional as possible.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The day after the election, well, one, I chose not to look at the results as they came in. That was a conscious choice. And so the next morning I got up and I didn't turn on any of the media, social or otherwise. And I began to write. And journaling is one of my avenues that we talk about as a tool to help emotional regulation. For me, that's the role that it plays. So I started to write, and recognizing that regardless of what happens, we cannot move forward unless we deal with the healing aspect of our space. That we have to do that. We have to do that in order for us to love each other, trust each other. And when I say to love each other, love me as a human being. Trust me as a person, as a human being, so that we can then move forward. Because if you can see the merit of me as a person and recognize that I'm not so different from you, that there are more likenesses and more parallel things that we're dealing with, than things that want to be highlighted that separate us. We're in this as a human being together. And in order for me to begin for us to move forward, we have to come to that understanding. In the first session of ZOLA, we spend that time putting people on a level playing field. That it's not that your loss is any greater than my loss. Because for me, whatever I choose to identify as my lost love object is generic to me, but there's a universality to it within the group. And so I think that the beautiful part is that it says that whatever it is that you have experienced, let's begin to repair it. Let's begin to repair so we don't repeat it. And let's begin to build community, to build communities of caring globally as well as domestically. And that community really starts with your family. It starts with a community of self, that you look at yourself and say, let me do an honest inventory of what is blocking me, what is prohibiting me from being at peace with myself, what is prohibiting me from having a sense of joy for my life, right? Which is different from being happy with my life. Happy is like a flash in the pan, like you get great news about something, you're feeling happy. Joy to me says that I can have a sense of joy regardless of what's going on in my life, regardless of what is happening, that I can see past that, through that, and know that one, it's already all right. Two, that I have the tools to be able to move through whatever it is that's challenging me so that I can be the best me that I can be, and therefore be the best me in the context of my family that I can be, and then therefore can be the best me in the context of myself, my family, and my community, and ultimately humanity. So we have a great task ahead of us, but I am so excited and so optimistic about moving into 2025. If it does nothing else, hopefully, God willing, it will coalesce the communities for us to take the risk to begin to see each other again.
Yes, that's definitely the best impact of the ZOLA experience inside of a community. Is it allows us to learn each other, trust each other, and to move forward. Mm-hmm. Just a quick part of what's included in the ZOLA experience is the forgiveness aspect. Mm-hmm. And I think that is probably one of the most powerful conversations that we do have within our power talks, because forgiveness looks like a lot of different things, but a lot of times people tend to forgive themselves for the way that they reacted, just for the way that they reacted to someone doing some harm to them. Because at the end of the day, it's all of our personal responsibility on how we react to the things that occur to us. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, we're not proud of our reactions, or our reactions prolong the hurt that we've experienced. So the forgiveness piece is so powerful because it provides a level of closure, as well as, it empowers you as a person to know that you can continue to move forward in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And close that chapter, or close that experience to the point where it no longer perpetuates harm to you, and you can continue with your healing. And in regards to the community and the community growth, that is very important. We have to look at what we need to forgive in order for us to move forward. And, in 2025, I think in order for us to be repairing our relationships and strengthening our relationships, that forgiveness piece is going to be very important.
Absolutely. So thank you, Nadir, for sharing your insights. That is truly, truly appreciated. And join us for our next episode of Healing from Loss to Love, because it's all about love. Visit our website, www.thezolaexperience.org, where you will see upcoming events, and you'll be able to sign up for those events as well as for our upcoming monthly info experiential sessions. That will be our gift to the community. So thank you, and peace and blessings, as we say in ZOLA.
Peace.
Open